अन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुः श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधाकान्त नमोस्तुते। तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for beautifully chanting. It was very inspiring to hear. It's always nice to hear devotees chant. Can I share the screen, Mataji? Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, I'm having... Yes, Prabhuji, you can.
Okay, great.
You can share.
Yes, okay, great. So...
Prabhuji, time to time, my video will stop because I'm having some challenges.
Okay. I'll just,
Yeah.
No,
so,
not to worry.
But my
yeah, just need to share the screen. Okay, for this. Okay. So, Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Hare Krishna. So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 1, Verse 9. Parinishthitopi nargunya.
Parinishthitopi nargunya.
Parinishthitopi nargunya.
Parinishthitopi nargunya.
Uttama shloka lilaya.
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 Grihita cheta rajarishi.
Shloka
Rajarishi.
Grihita cheta rajarishi.
Grihita cheta rajarishi.
Akyanam yad aditavan.
Akyanam yad aditavan.
Akyanam yad aditavan.
Akyanam yad aditavan.
Okay. Word for word, we're going to do now. Parinishtita,
Parinishtita,
fully realized.
fully,
fully realized.
Api,
Api,
in spite of.
in spite,
in spite of.
Nairgunye,
Nairgunye,
in transcendence.
in
in
transcendence,
transcendence.
Uttama,
Uttama,
enlightened.
enlightened,
enlightened.
Shloka,
sloka,
Shloka,
verse.
verse.
Lilaya,
Lilaya,
by the pastimes.
by the past
by
time.
the
by the pastime.
Grihita,
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 being attracted.
being
Being
attracted.
being attracted.
Chetaha,
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 attention.
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 Raja Rishi,
Rajarshi,
Rajarishi,
O saintly kings.
O saintly
O
kings.
saintly king.
Akhyanam,
Akhyana,
Akhyana,
delineation.
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 Yat,
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 that.
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 Adhitavan,
Aditavan,
Aditavan,
I have studied.
I have
I
studied.
have studied.
Translation. O saintly king, I was certainly situated perfectly in transcendence, yet I was still attracted by the delineation of the pastimes of the Lord, who is described by enlightened verses. Purport. The absolute truth is realized at the first instance as the impersonal Brahman by philosophical speculation, and later as the supersoul by further progress of transcendental knowledge. But if by the grace of the Lord, an impersonalist is enlightened by the superior statements of Srimad Bhagavatam, he is also converted into a transcendental devotee of the personality of Godhead. With a poor fund of knowledge, we cannot adjust to the idea of the personality of the absolute truth. And therefore, the personal activities of the Lord are deplored by the less intelligent impersonalists. But reasons and arguments together with the transcendental process of approaching the absolute truth help even the staunch impersonalist to become attracted by the personal activities of the Lord. A person like Shukadev Goswami cannot be attracted by any mundane activity. But when such a devotee is convinced by a superior method, he is certainly attracted by the transcendental activities of the Lord. The Lord is transcendental, as are his activities. He is neither inactive nor impersonal. So, Hare Krishna, everyone. So this is a very interesting verse, and Shukadev Goswami is speaking it. And in the verse, Shukadev Goswami, he's saying that he was before perfectly situated in transcendence, yet he was attracted by the delineation of the pastimes of the Lord. So he was attracted by the discussion, analysis of the Lord's pastimes, which is described by enlightened verses. So when in Vedic philosophy, it's explained that in Satya Yuga, everyone was a transcendentalist. It doesn't go into the categories so much, but it's understood that there were people on different levels of spiritual realization, but they were all transcendentalists. So based in the Bhagavatam, it is said in the first canto, second verse, chapter 2, verse 11, it is said, Vadanti tattva vidas tattvam yaj jnanam advayam brahmeti param atmeti bhagavan iti shabdyate. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call the non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. So Brahman refers to the impersonal Brahmajyoti, and the people who were attracted to that were students of the Upanishads. Now, an example of these personalities are the four Kumaras and Shukadev Goswami. Personalities who were attracted to the Paramatma feature, the Kishora Dakshai feature of the Lord, are called Hiranya Garbhas or yogis. And in the first age, it's explained that in Satya Yuga, the process of religion is meditation, where they would meditate for tens of thousands of years. And finally, the topmost level is Bhagavan. These are the devotees of the Lord. Now, when you read the Bhagavatam, it's understood that Shukadev Goswami is explained that he was in the womb of his mother for 16 years. He refused to come out, and explained that Lord Krishna came, and Lord Krishna encouraged him to come out. As soon as he came out, he just left, and he wandered throughout the world. And Vyasadeva sent his students to come after him, and they attracted him back by discussing the pastimes of the Lord, and then he became attracted, and he learned further from his father, from Krishna Dvaipa and Vyas, who we know is the form of Krishna, the literary incarnation of the Lord. So Shukadev Goswami was someone who was an impersonalist. Now, Prabhupada uses the word impersonalist, and he refers to two categories of people. He refers to the Brahmavadis and to the Mayavadis. Now, the Brahmavadis are what Shukadev Goswami and the four Kumaras were, and I'm going to discuss that in a bit in this presentation. So the Brahmavadis are people who are attracted to the spiritual effulgence of the Lord. They do not deny the Lord's form. They do not deny the pastimes. They do not deny that the Lord has individuality, and they do. They are just not absorbed in it, but they are considered transcendentalists. They are on the path. Now, we see from the pastimes of the four Kumaras, when they heard about Lord Vishnu from their father, Brahma, they went to Vaikuntha, and they were stopped at the gates by Jay and Vijay. And, there's a whole pastime where Jay and Vijay were cursed, and they came down to fight with the Lord. In one sense, Jay and Vijay were right in not letting them in, because the four Kumaras weren't bhaktas. They went on the level of Narada Muni. So they were Brahmavadis. They were absorbed in the Brahman effulgence. They came to see the Lord. At that point, they weren't spiritually qualified. So then when Lord Vishnu appeared, it's explained that the tulsi at the lotus feet of the Lord, the aroma, it purified the consciousness of the four Kumaras, and they became devotees. Shukadev Goswami, by the discussion of the Bhagavatam, the verses, and the teaching by his father, he became a devotee. So, in other words, the mercy of the Lord and his devotees was the principle that elevated a Brahmavadi up to the level of a devotee. So you can follow the path of the Brahmavad path and the yogi path, but these are the indirect process, and it will take many years, but you won't be able to come onto the Bhakta level, the Bhagavan level, because you need the mercy of a devotee. Prabhupada's godbrother, Sridhar Maharaj, he said there are three things that are inconceivable to understand. He said Guru Tattva, the position of Lord Shiva, and the mercy of the mercy of the Lord and his devotees. These three topics are inconceivable. So just by the mercy, you can understand. At the same time, we understand they're transcendentalists. So they have a partial understanding of the Lord. It is explained in Laghu Bhagavatamrita that different transcendentalists, they have a partial realization of the Lord. So the example is given of milk. So someone may hear about milk. So he will have some understanding. He'll think, okay, it's white. It has a cold-like taste. If it's heated, it becomes sweet. Someone who has seen milk can see how someone tastes and what the experience is, but he can't have that experience. But someone who tastes milk, he has a much more comprehensive and detailed understanding of milk. He's seen it, he's heard about it, and he's tasted it. So his understanding is complete. So in the same way, a devotee of the Lord has a full comprehension understanding of the Lord, whereas a Brahmavadi, a yogi, do not have a comprehensive understanding. And the only way they can get that is by receiving the mercy of Krishna and his devotees. And generally, the devotees of the Lord are the ones who distribute Krishna consciousness. And we can see that how Prabhupada, he came to the West and he wrote his books, and he went into Tompkins Square Park, chanted Hare Krishna, and his disciples distribute the books all over the world. And people became devotees. And one of the greatest examples of that is if you go to Russia. In Moscow alone, there are 10,000 devotees. And I heard this 15 years ago. There's probably much more now. And there are, from what I heard from Gopal Prabhu in a class, he said that he was traveling through Russia, and he came to a village, a very remote village, because Russia is a massive landmass, and everyone in that village was chanting Hare Krishna. They didn't really know much about Krishna. They didn't really know much about the process. They just knew about Hare Krishna, so they were chanting it. And he asked him, well, how do you know about this mantra? And the villager said, well, many years ago, someone bought this book, and it just said to chant Hare Krishna. So we just memorized it, and we just chant Hare Krishna. So imagine they're all chanting Hare Krishna. They don't know what it means. And then a devotee comes and educates them further. So this is the mercy of a devotee. So I was thinking about this, actually, this principle that only in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, the tradition coming from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that only the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, only they understand that God is really a person. Because to be on the Bhagwan level means to understand Krishna in his Vrindavan pastimes, having different relationships with his followers, his devotees, and understand that Krishna has he can have a formal mood in the form of Lord Vishnu, and he can have an informal mood in the mood of Shyam Sundar. So only we understand that. So there's a very interesting pastime in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita where Gopakumar, he is in Vaikuntha, and he's going through the universe, and he comes to Narayan. He has a Narayan's assembly. He's eating, but he can't interact with him intimately. But he has a desire. Now, Gopakumar has explained he doesn't really have much spiritual knowledge. He just has this Gopal mantra that is chanting, that is purifying his heart, and is slowly becoming elevated to love of God, to the Vrindavan to the Vrindavan level. But he doesn't really know. So out of some sort of spiritual bliss, he says, "Hey Gopal." So then the Vaikuntha Dutas are like, "Why are you chanting this?" I mean, they know who Krishna is, but they're not attracted. They haven't come to that level. So the Narada Muni takes him to the side and says, "You shouldn't be chanting this here because the mood is not appropriate. If you want to chant this, you have to go further." So then he goes further. And then when he arrives in Goloka Vrindavan, Krishna runs to Gopakumar, hugs him, and says, "Where have you been?" We also hear of when Lord Ram was going through the forest. I can't remember the forest's name, but there were these sages, and they wanted to embrace Lord Ram. They were attracted to Lord Ram, and there was tinges of conjugal rasa there. So Lord Ram said, this pastime, this avatar and this pastime is not appropriate. You will all be born in Vrindavan as gopis, and then I will have pastimes with you. I will be able to reciprocate accordingly. So it's only in Gaudiya Vaishnavism we have this perfect understanding of God. Because in our philosophy, it is not undercut by karma and gyan. Karma means fruitive activities, and jnana means impersonal knowledge, i.e. you're taking away the idea that God is a person. So obviously jnana can also mean transcendental knowledge, but I'm speaking about the impersonal side. If you look at every religious tradition, there is an idea of God as a person, but it is undercut by karma and jnana. People say, well, God can't have a form. God can't have relationships with his devotees, with his followers, in the different religious traditions. But there's also like subtle references to God having a personality, God loving his people, God getting angry. So these are indications of his personality, but it is not at the forefront of their teachings. Generally, people worship God in a very fruitive and very impersonal way. But only in Gaudiya Vaishnavism do we have the understanding that God is a person and he likes to have loving relationships. So now this Mayavad philosophy, that is the second category of impersonalists. So I've explained what Brahmavadis are. Now Brahmavadis, we know they're people who are transcendentalists, they're bona fide, they're going through the spiritual evolution, and gradually they'll come to the yoga, to the Paramatma realization. And if they receive the mercy of a devotee, they will come to the Bhagavan platform. But Mayavadis are a different kettle of fish. Mayavad is a philosophy taught by Lord Shiva, which has no basis in the Vedas. So Lord Shiva, he was instructed by Lord Krishna to come to planet Earth and to teach this doctrine to get people to follow the Vedas again, because the people had rejected the Vedas in mass and they were following Buddhism. So India was actually a Buddhist country, if you study the history. So King Maharaj Ashoka, he patronized this religion. So then everyone was following Buddhism pretty much. There were Brahmanas there, they were devotees, but they weren't at the forefront. Nobody followed the Vedas. Then Lord Shiva came and he reintroduced authority to the Vedas and he taught this doctrine. And because people were they were Shunyavadis, they were pretty much atheists. He very carefully by linguistic, I'm trying to think of the word, but basically word jugglery, he established that that actually there is a God, we are God, but that God has no form. It's Brahman. So then he taught this, and gradually he made many followers. He also introduced this system of worshipping 5 personalities called Panchopashana, which is very prominent in many Hindu temples. And so basically his teaching teaches the idea that the ultimate reality is Brahman. Brahman gets covered by this ignorance, this thing called Maya. And as a result of that, Brahman fragments into individual parts who will become jivas. But actually, all those jivas are one. They're one substance, but they just don't realize it. So, Prabhupada would if you study Prabhupada's teachings in great detail, Srila Prabhupada refutes this idea of Mayavad. Actually, not just Prabhupada, but the Acharyas. Madhvacharya has written a book where it's called, he said, I can't remember the Sanskrit name, but it's basically 100 plus arguments against Mayavad philosophy. In fact, all the Acharyas have argued very strongly against Mayavad philosophy. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that when you hear Mayavad philosophy, it will destroy you. He says, Mayavad bhasha shunile hoya sarvanash. Sarvanash means you're destroyed, right? So if you hear the teachings, even if you read it, even if you come near Mayavadi, it will destroy your it will destroy your bhakti, because it is offensive to Krishna. It is offensive to the process of devotional service. It's against the nature of the jiva, because the nature of the jiva is jiva rasrup hoy Krishna nityadas. Our process is to worship and love the Lord, and Mayavad philosophy takes us away from that. So it's considered to be an evil philosophy, and it was also, so that philosophy, if you follow that strictly, you won't go to the Brahmajyoti like the Brahmavadis, because Brahmavadis are not offensive. They don't deny the spiritual reality. You will end up going to hell. And Prabhupada calls it that your intelligence is stolen by Maya. It's called Maya Prita Gyan. It's covered. It's been stolen by Gyan. Stolen by Maya. Sorry. So this philosophy of Mayavad is actually, if you study philosophy, Western philosophy, Chinese philosophy, even Indian philosophy, it's pretty much pervaded everything. There are many great philosophers. I wouldn't say they're great. I don't even know if there are great philosophers in this day and age, but Christian theologians, Paul Tillich, another one, I can't remember his name, but they all taught an idea of God which was tinged with Mayavad philosophy. So it's pretty much pervades the Western philosophical science understanding. So we have this, so the idea is that everything is one ultimately. So in Western philosophy, this is called monism. And then you also have materialism, which is the philosophy of science, which is everything is material. So in our Gaudiya Vaishnavism, Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas go to great lengths to establish that We are not, we are one with God, but we are different from God. We're inconceivably, simultaneously one and different. Prabhupada gives the example of the sea. The sea has a drop of water, but that drop of water may be qualitatively the same as the ocean, but it's not the same quantity. So Prabhupada explains that so we cannot. So Prabhupada gave many examples where he used to have mock debates. He would say, if everything's one, why don't you wear a ball of cotton? If one Prabhupada disciple, he was arguing with a Mayavad philosophy. He said, well, if everything is one, because that's what they say, why don't you just eat straw? Ultimately, everything was one, isn't it? So this philosophy is not practical on any grounds. It cannot be practiced. You cannot say everything's one and then make a distinguish between things, because that's not the philosophy of Mayavad philosophy. So it's an inherent philosophy that is doomed to fail. Mayavad is actually the philosophy of the Shankaracharya's followers, Advaita and Vedanta. It can also be called Kevala Advaita. So we study in the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he went to Banaras. He was told by his two followers, Tapana Mishra and that I can't remember the other person's name. I'm just having a bit of a moment here, but there are this very staunch Mayavadi called Prakashananda Saraswati. He is criticizing your character. He's saying that you're engaging in kirtan, you're engaging in sentimental dancing, but you should be studying Vedanta, because Mayavadi traditionally studied the Upanishad. They studied Vedanta Sutra. Please go and preach to him and save him. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes there, and he comes in a very humble way, because the sannyas school he belongs to, because he took a sannyas from Keshava Bharati, there's hierarchy. He's not at the top, whereas Prakashananda was from the top level. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes, he sits down at where you wash your feet, and that is considered a very dirty place. So Prakashananda Saraswati, despite being this great scholar and philosopher of Vedanta and Upanishads, great leader in that Mayavad tradition, he takes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by the hand, and he feels sorry for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He says, you shouldn't be sitting here. This is a dirty place. And because he did that started that he basically performed unknowing devotional service, Agyata Sukriti, and then he became receptive to the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he received the mercy. So that Mayavad philosophy that was deeply rooted in his heart was rooted out. And then it's explained that at the end they all chanted Hare Krishna. It doesn't explain that they became pure devotees, but because they received the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, their devotional life started. So we take great responsibility of preaching against Mayavad philosophy. If you analyze Srila Prabhupada's pranam mantras, Prabhupada's pranam mantra is the second part, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashchata Deshatarine. His mission is to preach against impersonalism, voidism, which is Shunyavad, and Nirvishesha, which is Mayavad philosophy. And Prabhupada, there's an interesting pastime I heard from one of the early followers of Srila Prabhupada, where they were at 26 Second Avenue in New York City. And Prabhupada was talking about Mayavad philosophy. And these two devotees, they said to themselves, when have you ever met a Mayavad philosophy? And what they didn't realize until later on was that Prabhupada was actually preaching to them, because they were all contaminated by Mayavad and Buddhist philosophy, the Voidism philosophy, because it's prevalent in education, in the social system, and in science, and in sociology. It's pretty much there. It's covered them completely. So Prabhupada he made it his mission to destroy these two teachings. There's this very, I remember many years ago I was at the Manor, and there was this the start of this the VHP Vishwa Hindu Parishad. They came with all these different spiritual leaders, and the leader of the Shankaracharya came. His name is also Shankaracharya because they adopt the name. I'm not sure which part of India he was from, but he came. So on the stage, everyone was speaking nationalistic slogans and they were glorifying Prabhupada, which was very nice. And then when the Shankaracharya came, he started preaching Mayavad philosophy. He was saying, and the deities were there. And in front of them, he was saying, well, you don't really have to surrender to them. You have to surrender to the soul within them, the Brahman. So naturally, this is on our property, and in front of the deity is very impersonal. So I remember Shivram Maharaj was there, and they had a debate live on stage. You couldn't hear the debate, but Shivram Maharaj writes about it in his Vyas Puja, and he completely destroys this Mayavadi. And basically, Shivram Maharaj, because Lord Shankaracharya is Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva is a great devotee of the Lord. And Shankaracharya, he sometimes preached his philosophy, his real philosophy of Vaishnavism or devotion to Lord Krishna. And he wrote this very famous bhajan called Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam. So Shivram Maharaj, he said, Swamiji, to the Mayavadi, he said, do you know what Shankaracharya also said? He said, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam. And then, and he finished it with that. And the Shankaracharya, he was totally taken back by that. So the real Shankaracharya, or Lord Shiva, in his final, you could say, part of his life where he wrote this, he reveals his true mission is to preach, is that he's the devotee of Lord Krishna. So we if you study, I mean, we don't really study Vedanta Sutra in our movement, but there's a commentary by Baldev Vidyabhushan, and some devotees have translated it. So it explains that Shankaracharya, when he wrote his commentary, he wrote that Vyasadeva made a mistake in compiling this book. He made some errors. So in this conversation between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Prakashananda Saraswati, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu refuted this. He said, Vedanta Sutra cannot be wrong because it is the words of God. He says, Ishvara Vachana. It is the words of God. God cannot make a mistake. And then he refutes, he goes through it individually. It's quite technical, but he goes through it. And he basically establishes that devotional service to Krishna, and it teaches it teaches Vaishnavism. So it's a very interesting. If you read Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Prabhupada goes into great detail. So the Vedas, the Vedas are summarized in the Vedanta Sutra, which is the codified explanation of the Upanishads. And after compiling that, it's very hard to basically come to the conclusion that Krishna is God and Bhakti Yoga is the goal of life. So Vyasadeva was very despondent, and then he went to his spiritual master Narada Muni, and Narada Muni said, the reason why you feel like this is because you haven't discussed the glories of devotional service, and you haven't discussed Shri Krishna. You've made it very dry, very abstract, very impersonal. Of course you're going to feel despondent. Because remember, people of Kali Yuga are not intelligent. They don't live long lives. They're very quarrelsome, and they have all bad qualities. So this book was meant to be for them. And after writing, he felt very dissatisfied. So then when he went into meditation, and Prabhupada says in his spiritual maturity, he wrote Srimad Bhagavatam. And when he wrote that, the first verse of the Bhagavatam is Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. He established as that. And then later on in the I believe the first canto, he establishes the understanding, the essence, the ultimate understanding of the Bhagavatam, which is the understanding of the Vedas, is Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam. So every book in a Vedic philosophy has one verse that gives you the meaning gives you the ultimate conclusion, the ultimate essence, the ultimate summary of the book. So in Bhagavatam, it is the famous verse, Iti Chamsa Kalaha Pumsa Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So if you read the Bhagavatam, you come to a different conclusion, then you haven't understood the Bhagavatam. In Nectar Devotion, Anya Bilashita Shunyam, Gyan Karmadhyana Avritam, Anukulyana Krishna, Anushilanam Bhaktir Uttama. That real bhakti is devoid of karma and gyan. It's favorable. So that verse, if you read Nectar Devotion, you will get the correct understanding of the Bhagavatam, of the Nectar Devotion. But if you get another understanding, then you're gonna miss it. So he explains in a very clear-cut way. So it's very interesting, the history and the way it goes about it. Obviously, it's all lila, it's all pastime, but it's for us because we sometimes we don't realize that actually we can because we have this bhakti lata beach that's growing within us. I mean, it's used in a metaphorical sense, but there is a beach. And basically, we have to protect it from the weeds that can sprout. Like every flower has weeds growing around it. So we have to protect it from the weeds that can grow its own plants. And we have to make sure we do not get contaminated by karma and gyan, because that will ruin our plant. and which if it does, we won't be able to develop love for Krishna. We won't be able to progress in our devotional service. So the acharyas go to great length and they give details how to recognize this. So Prabhupada goes again and again and again. He just refutes Mayavad philosophy. He says, Brahmano hi pratishtaham. He says, Brahman is subordinate to Krishna. It says in the Ishopanishad, Avyakta, I can't remember the verse, but it basically says that please reveal yourself, because it's from the effulgence. So it's very clearly explained that God is a person. He has a personality. He has loving relationships with his devotees. And Prabhupada explains about the Brahmavidis, even if because Brahmavidis want to go to Brahmajyoti. Brahmajyoti is the effulgence of Krishna. When they get there, there's nothing to do there. There's no variety. It's just you're just like a someone gave the example of the light bulb. You're just like a light bulb amongst many light bulbs. You're going to get bored there, and then you're going to come back to the material world, because the soul by nature wants rasa. It wants taste. That taste can only come from Krishna consciousness when we're in our proper position of serving the Lord. So, devotees, we should become Shastra Chakshush. We should understand Shastra. We should follow the teachings of the great acharyas and understand their teachings to understand Shastra. Then we cannot be confused. When we do that, we can't be cheated in bhakti. Like if you go to, if you go to India, there's so many strange, wonderful, well, I would say wonderful, crazy philosophies. There's a certain place, I don't know where, but I saw on YouTube where there's a temple, and it's dedicated to a famous cricketer. There's a temple dedicated to a Bollywood film star. I mean, they're worshipping it, and it's like you're worshipping, giving arti to it. It's kind of like Mayavad philosophy. You're worshipping a human to be God. But that's the problem. When you're not Shastra Chakshush, you can be swayed by any philosophy. So, and I remember when I was I was traveling in a cab many years ago. No, not in a cab, sorry. I was at the Manna and I was leaving. It was Janmashtami. And so I was getting in my car, and because the Manna is kind of out in the sticks, it's not near any public transport, so you need a car to go there. This couple, they stopped me. They knocked on my window, said, "Can we get a lift to the station?" So I thought, sure, no problem. Because it's kind of normal to do that anyway. So I gave them a lift, and then I started speaking to them, just trying to be, friendly and social, maybe trying to preach to them. Then they started saying to me their own philosophy. They said, "What is the point of coming to the temple and worshipping someone if you can't become that person?" Then I said, "Well, where are you getting that understanding from? Why do you think that is the purpose of worshipping the Lord?" And it would have been okay if they had a basis, but they had no basis. They just made it up. And I said, "Well, you're making up something. If I say to you a ridiculous process and I say it's the truth, are you going to believe me?" They said, "No." I said, "Well, you're following this philosophy. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense. You worship the Lord to become free from your material desires. So at the end of life, you can go back to God's planet, live an eternal life, and serve him with love and devotion. That is the purpose of life. That is what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita." So then when I mentioned the Gita, they said, "Yeah, but the Gita can be interpreted in many different ways." I said, "Not really, because the Bhagavad Gita is written in straightforward Sanskrit. You don't need to be a Sanskrit scholar to understand it." And the acharyas have given commentaries which explains it in a very clear-cut way, where when Krishna says Sarva Dharman Parichaja, Mamekam Sharanam Vraja, Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo, Mokshayishami Masucha, he's speaking about me. He's speaking about Krishna. He's not speaking about someone else. So, and it was like it was so rooted in their head that they can become God, or anyone can become God, that it was like because there's different types of seeds. I won't go into because that's a bit technical, but it was so deep rooted that it can only be uprooted by them acknowledging that, by them reading, associating with devotees, chanting Hare Krishna, eating Krishna Prasadam, reading Prabhupada's books, because that's the only way they can uproot it. Otherwise, they'll still be on that platform. It's a very once you become a Mayavad, it's very difficult to leave because it's so offensive. It's only by the mercy of a devotee you can become that. There's many other examples. I also remember I'm trying to remember this past time that happened. It'll come to me. But yeah. So I remember I was watching because I'm a big fan of the 1980s Mahabharata. I thought it was a great TV show. It was amazing. It was exciting. Even my friends from different religious traditions used to watch it as well, because it came on BBC Two in the 80s. It was like a great thing to watch. And I remember speaking to my uncle about it a few years later, and I said, I really miss watching that. I was so lucky in my childhood. I watched Mahabharata and Ramayana. And he said to me, when the Mahabharata happened, I was there. You was also there. And I said, how's that possible? I said, everyone who died went, they went back to Godhead, or they went on to a different journey on a different, they wouldn't come back to planet Earth again. And because I wasn't even devoted, but I had that much little bit of knowledge. And he said, no, you was there. And I said, what does that mean we were there? He said, we were both there. I said, how do you know that? He said, because we're Brahman. And I knew the term Brahman because, so I said, yeah, but, I said, but that doesn't mean we're the same person. And it doesn't mean we were there, because everyone who died there must have gone back to Krishna's planet, because I didn't really have an understanding of the spiritual, or I just understood it as the heavenly planets. And I've always used to think, Krishna had his own planet, Lord Ram. So I didn't have that much understanding, but I knew I just had this inherent gut feeling that he was wrong. So, and something similar happened with Prabhupada, where Prabhupada met this man who, I think he was from Punjab. He was like a real Kshatriya, he had a gun, he used to hunt animals, and he had this mustache, like they do the Kshatriyas in Rajasthan and Punjab. And he said to Prabhupada, I have dreams that I was in a great war and I killed many people. I think I was in Mahabharata. And Prabhupada said, that's not possible. Everyone who participated in that war went back to Godhead. And this person was like really taken back. He was a bit offended. So Prabhupada had no problem smashing people's mental speculation. So it's really important that we study Prabhupada's books, and we don't study them in a passive way. We study the arguments, we study the points Prabhupada says. We try to understand the process of bhakti. We try to also be self-aware, because self-realization also means knowing your own conditioned state. Am I someone who's prone to arrogance? Am I someone who's easily persuaded by other people's arguments? If you're someone if you're someone who doesn't really understand the philosophy, or you're very you haven't read Prabhupada's books, then you should come to the realization, well, I'm going to make sure I read Prabhupada's books, because by reading and hearing, that keeps you inspired to practice devotional service, and in particular focus on chanting Hare Krishna. So Prabhupada gives many logical arguments, and Prabhupada says he says he uses a principle here in the purport. I'm just trying to find it here. Prabhupada talks a lot about philosophical speculation. And philosophical speculation is when you use logic and reasoning and sense perception. You speculate along the lines of Shastra. You come to a conclusion that does not contradict Shastra. And so basically, when we use analogies, when we use logic, and we try to understand the principle of Shastra, that is philosophical speculation. And Prabhupada encouraged that. But then there's mental speculation. Mental speculation is when you use the same tools, but then you come to a conclusion that totally contradicts Shastra. So philosophical speculation is good. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur would debate with himself, so he can understand the philosophy more. It could express it more deeply. So if you read, especially some of the Acharyas books, they have this thing called they'll have this opponent. He's called Purva Paksh, and he'll present an argument against Krishna consciousness, and then the Acharya will present a devotee in the commentary who will refute it, and they'll keep having debating with each other until the devotee is able to establish the principles of Krishna consciousness. So as devotees, we should do that. Prabhupada said we should understand this philosophy from different angles of vision. So in our movement, there's different stages of understanding Krishna consciousness. There's assimilating, there's contemplation, and there's realization. There's application, then there's realization. So a lot of us have assimilated, but the contemplation, we're not doing very well. So Prabhupada taught one way, which is by debating with one another, by asking questions. So we should do that often. We shouldn't be shy and think, oh, I don't want to ask, because there's a saying, a stupid question is not the one. A stupid question. There's no such thing as a stupid question. A stupid question is the one you don't ask. So you should never assume your question is not intelligent, because by asking that question, you learn, and then we develop more faith. And it's not really so much about defeating other people. It's about convincing ourselves that this process is the highest path. And this process allows us to understand God as a person. And it's also our duty as devotees. Prabhupada explains that if you don't preach Krishna consciousness, you won't have much spiritual strength. So we should understand this philosophy and try to preach this philosophy, because the world is covered by Mayavad philosophy and atheism. And we should be distributing Prabhupada's books. So we're sharing the treasure of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, the bliss, the magic of bhakti, of worship to Krishna, so that we can change their lives. It's our duty. So, but if we don't, we won't attract the mercy of Krishna, and then we'll stay where we are. So preaching is very much a part of our philosophy. We are missionaries, and we have Prabhupada's asked his followers to distribute his books and try to share this message. So, and then when we're doing that, then we will also, our faith will become much more stronger. Our bhakti lata bij will become stronger, and then we will not be swayed by no one, even if we don't know what another person, even if we don't know the arguments of what a person is saying, and even if the audience is with this person, we won't be swayed, because we know the truth is what's in Prabhupada's books, because he's representing the acharyas who are representing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Swayam Krishna. So I will stop here. If anyone has any questions.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for this excellent class and clarifying so many concepts. I learned a lot of things today, especially about Lord Shiva and spreading the Mayavadi philosophy. And then the various transcendentalists, and also inconceivable Lord Shiva and Guru Tattva and the mercy. So a lot of concepts coming out today. So let us open it up. Are there any questions or comments from the group?
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Mataji. Lord Shiva, forgive me if you explain this and I didn't understand it.
It's okay.
Lord Shiva is considered to be a great devotee of the Lord. He taught such lovely prayers of the Lord, and so in the Bhagavatam. Why would he be preaching a Mayavadi's philosophy, which is considered to be evil?
Well, if you look at the history of India, Prabhupada talks about this in Science of Self-Realization, that the Brahmanas had lost their potency and they were sacrificing animals en masse. It was like a slaughterhouse, innocent, because the Brahmana should only slaughter an animal if he can bring it back to life, but they didn't have that potency. So that's why in Kali Yuga, animal sacrifice is forbidden. Brahmanas should not do that because they don't have the potency to do that. So they were doing that, and India was becoming like a bloodbath. And that tradition to some degree is also followed in Nepal. I mean, it's very gruesome. If I've seen it. Like Hindus, these are Hindus who are doing it. They're slaughtering buffaloes. They're slaughtering chickens, animals. It's really cruel. So this was happening, and Mother Earth was burdened. She was so upset. So then Lord Buddha, Krishna, came in the form of Lord Buddha. And he taught ahimsa. He said, don't follow the Vedas. So then as a result of his preaching, strong preaching, India became a Buddhist country. So nobody followed the Vedas. So animal sacrifice stopped. And he taught this philosophy called Shunyavad. Now the problem is, okay, it's nice, you're teaching that, but you still need people to go back to God. You're not saving people. It was a part of the Lord's, because Kali Yuga, it was a part of the Lord's plan for this to happen. And then, so in the Padma Puran, Lord Shiva is with, he is instructed by Lord Vishnu that he should appear in Kali Yuga among human beings in his form, and he should quote false scriptures compiled by you, and he should preach a philosophy to turn men towards the Vedas, but keep my identity hidden, and use the philosophy of Buddhism to cover it, and so they can at least accept the Vedas as authority, because the people at the time, they were hardcore Buddhists, they were atheists, they weren't ready to accept that God is a person and you should worship it. So the next best thing was, there is no God, you're God, we're all God. So that was more acceptable to people of the time because they were conditioned like that. So then he taught this philosophy because it was an evolution of their spirituality for them to accept the Vedas. So when they accept the Vedas, then then you can try and preach to them later on, which the Vaishnavas, acharyas did, like Ramanuja, Madhvacharya, Nimbarka, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that all the acharyas They created they preached a certain part of the Vedas, the truth, and eventually came to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who gave the full truth, which is Ete Chamsa Kalaha Pumsa Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam. So you have to understand the historical situation, context of that time. People weren't ready to give up to follow bhakti. They weren't ready to follow worship of God. So he had to teach a philosophy which was concocted, which was basically covered Buddhism. Mayavad is covered Buddhism. It's done by word juggery. So when people could accept that, then the main thing was for them to accept the Vedas. When they accept the Vedas, then the Acharyas came, the Vaishnava, then they preached against Mayavad philosophy, and they were able to to fight back against this Mayavad philosophy, which escaped to other countries. Now, ultimately, yeah, you could say, it's evil and it's disadvantaging people. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that, he in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it says that when he appeared, he filled the world with love of God. He planted the seed of bhakti everywhere, so everyone has a chance to go back to Godhead. So because he appeared, that's why he's the most magnificent incarnation. So he's giving people a chance to go back. But if someone so it's not that he's leaving them in the lurch. He is coming to deliver them, and the Sankirtan movement is being preached all over the world. So everyone, and even the demigods are hearing this. Even the demigods are praying to come and being born on earth, so they can also participate this and become perfect and go back to Godhead. So you have to understand it. You have to understand the historical situation, because the Acharyas, the Lord, they preach according to time, place, and circumstance. It's like saying, you could also say, why did the Lord create Abrahamic religions, which are totally against the Vedic conclusion? Well, it's because people didn't have the spiritual qualification. They weren't ready to accept the comprehensive knowledge of the Vedas. Because if you look at the other religious traditions, they're very basic. They don't teach much about God. There's an idea there's a God. He's a person. He's a person who loves he wants to have a relationship. It's very hidden. If you were to come out and say that straight away, the great prophets and teachers would be persecuted. So in the same way, when Lord Shiva came, he could not preach directly like that. He had to do it step by step. There was a step-by-step spiritual. There was an evolution of philosophy in India, which brought this truth in. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and it created the stage for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to come and preach the Sankirtan movement. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does very much. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Is anyone
Hare
else?
Krishna, Sandhya Mataji, kindly unmute your question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, and Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, you said that Bhudevi got very burdened, and hence, she kind of summoned hell. So why is Bhudevi not getting burdened now? Because we are not only killing animals, we are killing human beings, except in such a brutal manner. So why does Bhudevi not get affected now? Hare Krishna.
Yes. So when Bhudevi, even when during Krishna's pastime, before Krishna came, Kamsa was killing the Brahmanas. He was torturing them. He was killing innocent people. So then she appeared before Lord Brahma in the form of a cow and requested his help. So in the same way, she's also burdened, but Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, and he came not to kill people. He came to give them another way of killing their ignorance, which was the Sankirtan movement. So right now, the Sankirtan movement is having an effect on the consciousness of the world. Prabhupada explains that because of the Sankirtan movement, World War III was avoided. He says that in his conversation. He also says that the influence of Kali was lessened. And as we know, according to our philosophy, that we are in the golden age, and everyone is going to become a devotee. Pretty much, they're going to. Prabhupada talks about it. He says that the economic, the sociological, the society is going to collapse, and then this is going to be, and then everyone is going to be starving. There's going to be so many they're going to be starving, and then the devotees are going to create farms where people will come, they'll work on the farms, they'll eat Krishna Prasadam, and they will teach them to chant Hare Krishna, and there will be a global revolution. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come, and we being his devotees and servants, we're preaching this mission. And I was remembering this pastime. It's not basically, there was this person basically something happened in Russia where they thought the USA government fired nuclear missiles in the 60s, and there was 60s or 70s, I think it was, and this person had the decision to basically fire to respond, because they have this system of responding. And then they found out it was a false alarm. But this person's relative was he had come in contact with the teaching of Krishna consciousness. He himself wasn't a devotee. But anyway, and then so this person, basically, you could say he saved civilization. But this person had some connection with Krishna consciousness, and basically the teachings, what he read from Prabhupada, influenced him not to do it. Now, I'll try and dig out that past him. It's very interesting. So we shouldn't think that Krishna is not doing anything. He is, and we're doing it for the Sankirtan movement. We're distributing Prabhupada's books. We're chanting Hare Krishna. Because when I think I was explaining last week, when we're chanting Hare Krishna, it's destroying people's ignorance. You're planting a spiritual seed in that person's heart that is basically awakening spirituality, awakening the love of Godhead, and basically they will, maybe not in this lifetime, maybe in the next lifetime or wherever, they will surrender to Krishna. How that happens, how, we don't know, only Krishna knows, but we are doing that. We're changing the consciousness of people. It's like there's many stories of people where there was going to be like riots or protests, and the devotees came and they chanted Hare Krishna. It completely changed the environment. Prabhupada said once there was a heat wave. I'm not sure where it was, but he said if you do, yeah, it was in South India actually. It's in Science of Self-Realization. He says that if you do Sankirtan, this heat wave, which is created drought, will go away. And lo and behold, it worked. So we shouldn't think that Krishna is not what's happening now is worse. It's actually, it's not, we can't say it's worse than what was happening at that particular time, because we don't know the full extent. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has appeared, and he has set the process, and it is saving people. We are spreading the movement. Like I gave you the example of the people in that Russian village. They were all chanting Hare Krishna. Just by chanting Hare Krishna, you're not just affecting yourself, you're affecting everyone. Even the bacteria, even the germs, even the animals, even the plants, they're all being benefited. So in their next life, they'll come and be born as devotees. So we're having a great effect on the consciousness of this world. And the demigods are noticing it. They're praying that they can be born in this planet. So we shouldn't think that the Lord is not, he hasn't noticed. And and it's like, if you read the Bhagavatam, it explains, I think it's in 12th canto, explains that this is after the golden age, the society will collapse and it will become, Kali Yuga will fully manifest. And at the end of Kali Yuga, Kalki Avatar will come. He will kill all the demons and reestablish Satya Yuga. So the Lord has a plan, and we may not understand his plan, but he knows his plan and he knows how it's going to work, and everything will work because he's the Lord and Master of everything, and everything he wishes it comes to fruition. So we just need to be an instrument in Krishna's plan and try to and try to assist the Lord so we can get spiritual benefit and go back to Godhead. Is that okay, or do you want to ask anything further to that?
No, Prabhuji, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Okay. No worries, thank you. Hare Krishna. Anyone else have a question?
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. We have exhausted our time, but if there is any one question can be allowed, because Prabhuji said it.
Okay.
Question.
Okay, Hare
Shrimati ji,
Krishna,
did you
Prabhu.
have a question?
Hare
Yes,
Krishna.
I wanted to ask something, Prabhuji. In Satyuga, the animals were like sacrificed in the yagnas by qualified brahmanas, and I don't understand that. How can you do it to please God? Because I always feel that it's a cruelty to animal. But please
That's a good
explain.
question. Yeah, no, it's a good question. We have to understand that that these brahmanas, the thing, when they would sacrifice these animals, they were able to rejuvenate the body of the animal. Sometimes the soul of the animal would go to the higher planetary systems. And it wasn't that they would eat the meat. It was a form of sacrifice. Now, you have to understand the Vedic time was a very ritualistic time. But the Brahmanas, they weren't cruel people. They were very compassionate people. They lived for dharma, and they would die for dharma. So everything they did was strictly in accordance with the Vedas, and the Vedas are the sound vibration of the Lord. They're non-different from the Lord. So everything they were doing was according to the Lord's direction. But those animals were rejuvenated. Their bodies were rejuvenated, and their souls would sometimes go up. They would have a human birth in their next lifetime. But it's not like how we see in the slaughterhouses where they cut the throat of the animal, and the animal's is on the ground trembling in pain and scared, and then they cut it up and eat it. It was nothing like that. It was nowhere as brutal as that. It was very mystical the way they did it. Sometimes they wouldn't. It wasn't like they get a knife and they cut the throat. It was nothing like that. It was a very mystical process. And if you study some other things, you come across more pastimes, like more things like this. Like, we have the principle of sati, right? When a husband dies, the woman goes into the fire. Now the thing is that process is forbidden in Kali Yuga. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu forbade it. But if you look in the Vedic times, when these people did sati, they actually invoked the fire from within them. It wasn't that they sat on a funeral pyre and they were burnt alive in pain. It wasn't like that. They basically invoked that fire from within with the deep meditation and devotion to their husband and to Dharma. And their soul left that body way before the fire embraced them. So they didn't really feel anything. But again, it's a very mystical, advanced process. That's not, it's not relevant in today's day. You cannot practice this. So, and I know in India, I mean, as the British outlawed it because it was being practiced, but it was a cruel practice that should not be followed in today's age. So we should understand what the Brahmanas were doing was not a bloodthirsty thing like we understand animal slaughter to be. But what they were doing in the beginning of Kali Yuga, which made Lord Buddha appear, that was bloodthirsty. That was cruel on all levels. And a semblance of that is still practiced in Nepal. They have this festival that happens every year. It's completely disturbing. I mean, it's really cruel, and no one can get spiritual benefit by doing that. So we have to understand it was a different time. There was different rules, and these people were qualified. It wasn't just knowing the Vedas or knowing Sanskrit. They were spiritually qualified. I mean, these Brahmanas were mystical. They were like, they had mystic potencies. They were totally different from what we see now. That's why there are no real Brahmanas in Kali Yuga. It's said that you can't have true Brahman. You can't have the Brahmanas that you had of the Vedic times today. So it is a very disturbing thing. But and also a lot of these rituals are karma kanda rituals, which is fruitive. Devotees didn't do this type of stuff. They were, because in Satya Yuga, the process of religion was meditation. In Treta Yuga, it was deity worship. So it was sacrifice. You can also have sacrifice without animals. And then in Treta Yuga, it was deity worship. And in this age, it is the chanting of Hare Krishna. So we shouldn't try to understand something like that. It's very difficult for us to comprehend because we don't understand what was going on. What was the spiritual tools they had? It was we have no understanding of that. But these Brahmanas weren't like the Brahmanas, like the butchers. We shouldn't think of them as the butchers. And you should understand these animals were actually benefit. They got a new body, and their souls were elevated to the human platform or to the higher platform. Does that make sense?
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, thank you. It makes a lot of sense now. Thank you, Prabhu.
No problem. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. I'm sorry we'll have to end the session now.
Yes.
Can I request Arya Govind Prabhu? Are you able to end this session for today, please? Hare Krishna.
Yes, Mataji. Thank you. Thank you, Prabhu, for this wonderful session. You've talked so much about Mayavadi philosophy and how we should treat it, and then how we should receive it, and then how we as devotees should treat and then should learn about our own philosophy, and then be firm on our philosophy and preach the essence of Krishna consciousness to others. Thank you so much, Prabhu. I request devotees to unmute and chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra once in glorification of His grace, Dharmaraja Prabhu.
Hare
Hare
Krishna, Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare
Kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu bhayascha Pitiyanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai.
Thank you, Jai.
Hi.
Jai.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you very
Hare
much. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Wonderful class. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for a wonderful class, Prabhuji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.